start out with your name for people who don't know who you are.
Okay, my name is Stephanie Victoire.
Okay, and how old are you?
I'm 36.
Okay, so Stephanie, who are you on a soul level?
I love this question so much. It's probably going to have different parts. So at a soul level, I would say I am complex and simple at the same time. Complex being that from my grown perspective and the kind of world that I have put myself in, I see myself as like a multifaceted soul that's, if you believe in that kind of thing. I mean, I definitely do, of course. It's the work, it's my nature, that I've just been many things over many lifetimes. So
Mm,
I'm an amalgamation of all my experience through all timelines, spaces, dimensions, realms. And at a simple level, I am a Taurus sun, Pisces moon, Gemini rising chick that is creative and compassionate and holds things like desire important, and holding space at a soul level, need to be able to hold space for other people,
mm.
to be able to recognize another soul, and to be able to look beneath those layers. So at a simple level, it's human qualities obviously stripped away, but at the same time, the humanity within a soul that exists already without the form.
I love that. What a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was
Thank
amazing.
you.
Um, Tell me something that's had a really big impact on who you are today. Like, was there a person or an experience in time where, like, after you met them or after you went through this thing, you kind of like changed?
Oh, multiple times. I mean, I got thrown in the deep end as a child. So I would say, growing up in a violent household, I would say my father is my greatest teacher, but he was also my toughest lesson. So, he was extremely violent and abusive. He was an addict, although I didn't really see that at the time. But it was, I would say, I grew up with him and my mum in the same household until I was about 6 years old. But what it has done is that it really created a vivid, sharp visual memory for me. So I saw a lot when I was small.
Mm,
So what it instilled in me was this ability, or I'd say this just kind of this tick in me to observe people really closely, to study people, to
mm,
watch how adults talk to one another, to see how people interact with one another, and to create this discernment in me, from such a young age as to what felt correct and what was incorrect. And I guess he was the catalyst for me needing to develop an understanding for why people do what they do and where that comes from. And it set everything else in practice. How it changed me is when I reached a point where I worked on healing that. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Hawaiian prayer, the Ho'oponopono prayer.
no.
It's a beautiful prayer. It's a way of kind of like releasing and healing. And it's, I'm so sorry. I thank you. I love you. I forgive you.
You said that on the EM live. Yeah, that's
Yes.
so beautiful.
And not only is it great to say it to yourself, but to say it to anybody else, But
Mhm.
when I reached that point of being able to look at the root causes and to look at where I could find compassion in what my dad had done out of his own pain, it really opened up how I could hold space for people obviously in a balanced way, but I would never obviously allow any wrongdoing. But it really taught me how to treat people with, there is always a reason. There is always a reason for them doing what they do. our response to that is our responsibility. You know, but if it traumatizes you, you know, it's not a pain that is happening to you for any malicious reason on a higher level.
Mm,
It's happening to you to get you to a stronger place. And
mm,
if you can hold compassion for yourself whilst you're going through that, then you have a greater container to have compassion for other people who just need it. And I looked back on it and I was like, all right, when I was saying this prayer, it was like, okay, what is it that you were missing? Like, to my father, what is it that you were missing in life that you resorted to violence? What is it that you felt you didn't get from us? Because this is what we didn't get from you. So how did all of us miss that? But if I don't think I would be who I am today, and I wouldn't be sort of as wide a lens a healer, if you like, with
mm,
that, without going through that lesson. I think that's really, really key. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, in the healing industry, there is a lack of wanting to look at that from
mhm.
some people. You know, I think wrongdoing
Yeah.
is a very complex, you know, kind of thing that needs to be picked apart. But ultimately, it's, you know, sorry, it's a long answer, but to
No,
summarize,
please.
it's it's understanding that there's root cause. So anything that anyone's ever done to me or anything that I've experienced that has shaped me, you know, I've gone through a lot of other things. I've gone through sexual abuse. I've gone through almost losing my life in Nepal, on a crazy adventure, being caught up in the crossfire of a very, very scary political time, and
Uh,
making it home each time I went out there and traveled and then made it home, and I did it alone. That basically just amplified my sovereignty. And
mm,
I feel like I need that so that I can help other people find theirs. So I'm grateful for those experiences. They obviously they fucking put me through the ringer,
yeah, yeah.
but I've gotten to a place now where I can manage it, and I'm grateful that I can manage it better than a lot of other people. So I needed to be a healer in order to be able to give that to people, because I feel like I can.
Yeah. I definitely feel that like on so many levels. And it's crazy how like the worst things that happen to us or the things that feel like the worst things that happen to us are really like our biggest teachers. And we
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to like help others the way that we do without going through those things because we wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
have the like need or the knowledge of whatever we're using to like help
Mm,
people without
yeah.
those tragic things.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I get that for sure. Is there anything I don't know how long quarantine was in London. Was
Mm-hmm.
it different? We've been on
Yeah, it
quarantine
was
since
different.
like March to I mean now we're still
Mm-hmm.
I mean I've still been kind of in quarantine. During the summer people were like outside more, but things have still been like randomly shut down.
Yeah.
How was quarantine for you in London and is there anything more that you learned about yourself in that time where you were kind of forced to like be alone and in your head? And I'm not sure if you live with anyone out there, if you have your own place or
So I was in between trips, so I basically don't really live anywhere. So I
okay.
haven't done for the last, and this is another subject of mine as well that is really, it's a big thing. We can get into it later if we have
Yeah.
time, but like the concept of home, you know. And so I've just been like traveling and floating around. I was in America, so I was back here, came back in February, and then about a month later we went into lockdown. So it was anybody who was over the age of 75 would be quarantined for at least 12 weeks.
Wow.
And the rest of us, we were just waiting on the news. It was kind of like week by week they were like kind of extending it or whatever. So you could only go out to get groceries, or you could just go out for a walk, as long as you
Mm,
social distance and you didn't go too far. They did end up starting to police it. So police would kind of like, you know, if you were driving around, they pull you over and say where you're going, and if you didn't have a good reason to be anywhere, you could either get fined or they would escort you back home.
Wow.
Yeah, so it got like that. It was eerie. I was with my mum, and so that's where all my stuff is at the moment, because she lives near the airport. So I rocked back up at her place, and then all of this kicked off. So I didn't have a chance to really think about what my next plan was, like whether I was going to rent a place in the city or if I was going to move in with somebody. And so I just kind of got stuck there. But the beauty of it is that it really forced me and my mum to hash out a lot of old things, and it
Mhm.
was really important. Some of the stuff that I just mentioned about my dad came back up. There were a lot of things I didn't know about my mum before this lockdown, because we hadn't spent this amount of time together since I was a teenager, and it was turbulent, back then. And she is someone who emotionally kind of like blocks difficulty, and she's a very nervous, timid person. But 14 years of marriage and an abusive marriage, it will beat you down, it will shut you off. And
Oh, yeah.
so it was really always difficult for me to try and like hold compassion for my mum, but at the same time, I really never felt like she fully saw me or could see me beyond the teenager Steph, you know what I mean? And like what who I was as an adult, how I run my life without her, without family. So it really caused her to really look at me, and for me to really look at her. And my mom is she's clairvoyant, but she's somebody who's terrified of her ability. She kind
Mhm.
of just sees shit and goes, ah, you know what I mean? And never wanted to study it, never, but she's so open. She's so openly spiritual.
Mhm.
And I definitely grew up in a household where it wasn't a question whether that was real or not. It was just real. It was a reality for me. So she knows that I was doing a lot of healing. And I think it was like when we got into spring, so I had my birthday during lockdown. That was an
Mhm.
interesting experience,
Yeah. I'm a
'cause
Taurus too, so I was
oh
like,
yeah,
yeah.
yes, Taurus. It's like you want to have dinner with your friends, right? You want to be able to
Right.
like have a cozy, like
Mhm.
nicely set up day. And I
Yes.
usually do that. Like as a Taurus, I usually like plan my birthday like from morning, like even down to like the kind of breakfast I'm gonna have, because it's
Yes.
gonna be special. It's gonna
Yeah.
be bougie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it
Yes.
was just like me and my mom and some cake, and she made me a Mauritian curry, and that was really nice, and that was a bonding moment. But
Yeah.
we got into like, what was it, Gemini Cancer season, and oh
Mhm.
my god, like I was pretty much in bed every night just processing. A lot of old stuff came up. Cancer fucks me up, like I was
Yeah.
emotionally, yeah. Pisces moon too, so it was like all that water. And my dreams started to get stronger, and I think it was like, you're in this really intimate, confined space in lockdown. There are no other external energies,
Mhm.
so you're just with your energy. How you go about your day and you're talking with people or you're socializing, you're just taking on like little nuggets of other people's stuff.
Yeah.
But during lockdown, you had to really, really be with your stuff, and it was just you,
Yeah.
really. I mean, yeah, you Skype your friends or whatever, or you message and
Mhm.
talk to family, but at the same time, when you lay down at night, like all of this is like tips up to the surface, right? And it was really interesting because things got so quiet that I got so close to my guidance. I got really close to my intuition,
Mm.
and it was almost like the radio dial just got turned up, the volume got turned up on that, and I was really listening to what was happening. Dreams about my childhood home were coming up. My mum was like in the next room having her own dreams, and we'd talk in the morning, and she'd be like, I dreamt about your grandma, or I dreamt that you were a baby again in my arms, and things like that. And I'd be like, that's weird, I dreamt that I was in like our childhood home. So it started to correlate with this healing that was happening during lockdown. And I realized that it was absolutely meant to be, that I kind of got, for want of a better way of putting it, stuck with my mother in lockdown, because universe was like, all right, you guys, time to get together and clear the past.
Yeah.
And so we have, just layer by layer by layer, she's opened up a lot more. She's remembering things that she didn't remember before. She told me even, about how her and my father met, and I didn't even know that story because she never wanted to, yeah. never wanted to say this shit before, never wanted to talk
Yeah.
about it before, because we just know what we know. We all remember what we remember, you know.
Right.
And coming back to the memory thing, I think like that's why I have such a long-term memories, because that stuff so in my earliest was so sharp. So for me, communicating with my mom, it's like, but there's stuff missing and I want to know, I want to understand. And I didn't want to push her, but she recognized that it made me more compassionate towards her, the more I knew about what she was going through.
Mm,
And so I'm grateful that this happened, and I was with her. But in terms of, I know that everyone in London was having a hard time. Like, it was, especially in the center of the city, you know, people felt there was just a high level of anxiety, like just going to buy things, you know,
yeah.
panic buying and all that shit, and just the stress of trying to, yeah, go and get some milk, you know.
Did you all run out of toilet paper too?
At one point. But you know what, it was
Okay.
really funny because like they interviewed someone on the in the supermarket, and they were like, we actually have the stock, but you guys are not giving us a chance to unpack it all. It's actually in the back, but you are fighting and going crazy, and like we're so busy handling the queues, handling all the people in the store, that we don't have time to actually get the stock out on the shelf. So if you could just hang tight
Oh my
and be
God.
patient, you know, we haven't run out. It's just crazy. And it's like, just let them get on with it. Just let them bring it on through, you know?
Oh
So,
my God.
but people of like households of two people, and they're buying like Costco
Yeah.
levels, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I wish that was the situation here. We actually did run
Oh
out of,
no.
oh yeah, like, yeah, there was, you couldn't find toilet paper anywhere, anywhere.
Wow.
Like people were using, I mean, luckily I didn't have to do this, but I saw like people had to use like fabric and
Stop.
rewash. I'm serious. People were using paper towels, and it was even like harder to find, like people were buying all the napkins because toilet paper was gone. And then
Mm-mm.
all of these like toilet paper companies, they were just like making things double time and sending stores like triple the amount. And then they would say like one per customer. Same thing with like, you couldn't find any cleaning products, either like Clorox or
Oh
like
my
gloves,
goodness.
masks, like none of that. Like on Amazon, everything was like gone. Like on Amazon, it was just crazy.
Oh
It
Lord.
was nuts. It was nuts. People were,
Wow.
it was crazy. So I'm glad that with you, it was like
Yeah.
needed to pipe down and wait a second.
Exactly. And then it started rolling on through.
I usually give people three different categories.
Hmm.
Um, I used to ask people to rate like what's most important to them to least important, but they all kind of feed off of each other. So
Okay.
I give this new option where you can talk about one of them or all of them, like whichever ones you feel speak to you and you feel like you have a strong opinion on or a lot of experience with, or like something really um whatever, like if you're really
Mm,
passionate about it and you have something to say. So the first category is love, sex, and relationships. And
yeah,
obviously, relationships can be platonic and familial as well. They don't have to only be romantic.
yeah.
And then the next is society, culture, politics, and everything that
Mhm,
goes into that. And the
mhm.
third is spirituality and or religion, because everyone's not religious, everyone's not spiritual, some
Exactly.
people partake. So obviously that covers every single thing that humans are made of in
Right?
general.
Exactly. I like that, though.
And those things feed off of each other, I think. So
Absolutely.
for you, what do you feel like, I don't know, you can like talk about in depth or have really strong opinions on, or takes precedent in your life?
Probably spirituality and religion,
Okay.
and then I would also say love and sex relationships too.
Okay, so you can start wherever you want. This is just like the floor for you to just say where you stand and how you feel. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay. So I get again, I think I was given the themes of spirituality and religion to learn about throughout my life and to be with throughout my life. Because even though I said to you that like my mum you know, was very open about that kind of thing when we were younger, one of the things that my dad was a born again Christian, and
Mm,
so he used religion as the punishment. So I grew up very much looking at this kind of dark side of religion, but also, you know, it was being preached to me as if it was, you know, the light. And it was very interesting. I went to a Roman Catholic school, like
mhm,
elementary, you would call it, but primary school for us, and high
mhm,
school. And I think ultimately it's hard to like blanket the whole thing and then kind of like go into to discuss all the details. I really can't abide by evangelism.
mhm.
I do think everybody has the right to believe or not believe.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, I've witnessed a great power in believing in something. Um, it having something to trust or train to put your trust in that is beyond your capability gives you that room to allow things to unfold in life, allow things to have a higher reason. And trust and faith can get people through a lot of things. Like, for example, I've seen like bereavement, you know, and, you know, I've been at funerals, and I've been at like, you know, a Catholic funeral, I've been at an atheist funeral where they just want to get the body cremated and done.
Mhm,
And in my experience, those people who were kind of grieving without any kind of sense of, let's just use a different word to spirituality, without any kind of sense of of soulfulness present in their lives,
mhm,
struggled with that bereavement a lot harder, because then it brought in the fear of death, it brought in the fear of finality. You know, and whereas spirituality and faith opens up transience, that things
mhm.
are in cycles. And
Yeah.
I do think strip those things away, that is ultimately what nature is, you know, and it's that nature is cyclical. Nature does what it wants to do beyond our control. You know, even though we might try and tame it and control it, we can't. You know, you ever see like flowers pushing through concrete walls and things like that, and concrete, you know, and that for me is like, it kind of parallels what I feel is the higher energy. I believe in energy, and I don't use, you know, words with people like God and stuff like that if it makes them uncomfortable. I'm very aware of how that might be received, because
Mhm.
language, you know, as a writer as well, language holds weight, and people shut down
Yeah.
when you use those words. People, you know, or even certain religions trigger people. So you know, there's a delicate balance of being able to, you know, find out what sort of soulfulness that person has in their life, has present in their life, without there being any kind of attachments to religion, or making them feel that that is something that is separate from them. But when, you know, you talk about energy with people, people can get a bit more on board with that. And when we're realizing that, like, you know, we're kind of, everything is breathing, everything is, you know, in its cycle, everything is in its process, and when we align with that, we get into a harmony, you know. And I really do think that's what builds community. I really do think that's what connects people, because when you start getting into that flow of energy, you see somebody else walking down the street as not just a person with their own ideals, with their beliefs or non-beliefs or whatever, but you start to see them as an embodiment. You start to see them as with a certain energy and a certain frequency that they're operating on. that can be harmonized, that can be expanded in some way. And usually when people are shut down, in my experience, I find that it's because it's a lack of faith. And that doesn't necessarily have to be religion or anything else,
Right.
but just
Yeah.
a lack of faith, as in not trusting the world.
Yeah.
And it's hard to trust the fucking world, of course it is. Look at it, look at the state it's in.
Yeah.
But we can trust nature.
Mm.
We can very much trust nature. We can rely on that, because we
Yeah.
know it's proven itself to us time and time again. And yet we don't want to look at it. But at the same time, I personally will look at Earth as an entity. I will
Oh,
look at,
yeah.
people, kind of use the term Mother Earth, but
Mhm.
my personal belief is that we are, we look at examples of trees. I see, Native Americans call them their tall standing brothers, and I think that's beautiful, because they mirror back to us what we are. We
Yeah.
are these pillars that were, as much as we are rooted down in the earth, we are also rising up to the sky, and we are connected, and we're sending out this
Mhm.
energy all the time. And if we kind of see ourselves as conductors of that energy of nature, of the cosmos, then we would take more care of what's happening in here. We would take more care of that vessel. We take more care of our hearts. We would take more care of that soul, because of the important energy that we're running through it all the time, and how we emit that to other people. And so I do feel like it's a shame if somebody really is fixed on not having a belief, if they just want cold, hard facts. But unfortunately, there's no healing on a personal level when that comes, when that's the attitude.
Yeah.
But also, looking at it from a spiritual perspective, is that I also believe in different lifetimes. So that person's cycle, or that person's journey in this lifetime, is to go through the journey of non-belief, because when they reach the end of their life, maybe there is something that happens for them karmically, that they need to address,
Mm.
and if they come back and do it again or whatever. But it's so that at a soul level, you remember that compassion when you come back, when you strip away the human form and you come back to that essence that you are. If you feel that you are, made of stardust, or you feel that you are, part of, the grand central sun, or great spirit, or whatever the terms are, if you feel that you are a tiny speck of that, then that whilst you're here, you can be more of that for other people. And the more that you are, you the greater that you're, the greater you can love people, the greater your compassion. Which brings me on to love and sex and relationships, is that, it's been tough. I'm definitely someone, I'm Taurus, so I'm ruled by Venus. And they have been themes. But I really believe in sacred sexuality. I really believe in sacred relationships. I believe in sacred friendships. Um, and looking at every single person as a teacher. And every time I've had a breakup, you know, and it's a shame, because I feel like what happens a lot is, like, for example, if you get your heart broken over and over and over again, the shame of that is if you step into a new relationship with a little less trust, and
Mm.
you step into that relationship with a few more traumas, and you have ignored the healing that you needed, you know um and I do think it's important for people to spend time learning themselves. But I also think that whilst you're in a relationship, you can learn together, because what happens, it's often separate. It's, and people say, oh yeah, you need to be your own person. Yeah, great, be your own person. But at the same time, it's a case of, like, how do we, because nothing, again, coming back to nature and coming back to spirituality, if you apply that in your relationships, friendships too, you have to accept the cycles. You have to accept that it's going to do what it's going to do, death and rebirth all the way, throughout those relationships. And you will go through really gnarly times with people, but if it's the right person to grow with and the right person to learn those lessons with, even in friendships, they will teach you something. Then when you actually cycle back around, a little more trauma is shed, a little more trust is increased, a lot more love is there, a lot more strength is there.
Yeah.
It means that you are more resilient, and that you don't there's a very fine line between, like, really being a great loyal friend or being a great loyal lover, and staying there and being in it when they're in it and having empathy. But stepping into somebody's story and taking it on as your own responsibility can be dangerous as well, because that person has their own, obviously, their own conditioning. They have their own roots, they have their own root causes. And even though you might empathize, or you might have gone through a similar thing in previous relationships, you haven't had their particular experience, so their responses will be different. And it's just about navigating that with people. And of course, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But there has to be you can't just be like, all right, end it, fuck you, see you later. That was a waste of
Right.
time. Do you know what I mean? Because it's never a waste of time.
It's never a waste of time.
Never a waste of time. It gives you tools. And I do think that, there's a lot of kind of societal, problematic things that have kind of given us templates as to how relationships should go. Or, it's like, oh, if they're not doing that, then you should call them out on this bullshit, and like, you ain't being treated right, or this, that, and the other, you know what I mean? And yet, so why are we still taking advice from external places, and why are we still looking at, examples that might be outdated,
Yeah.
and trying to find a blueprint that, let's face it, in the mass majority hasn't really worked a lot. I mean, what, divorce rates skyrocketed in the mid 20th
Yeah.
century, the baby boomer generation, that kind of thing. But I think it was just because back then people didn't know, well, they weren't really, I mean, obviously, you didn't have technology, you didn't have social media, but like, people have become a bit more disposable, unfortunately, now, get thrown away for the smallest of things.
Hmm.
Whereas they had this different, and that's just their conditioning, and it was of its time, that they had the notion that if there was any kind of connection or any kind of attraction, you made it with that person,
Right.
you know
There was no leaving.
there was no leaving, exactly. However, I still don't think that they had the tools to
Right.
really recognize and discern what was correct love and what wasn't.
Because they weren't staying with these people to like heal. They were just staying because they didn't want to be like Miss Jones had a divorce. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like they didn't want to be known as
exactly.
like the off family, the like different
Yep.
people. Like no one wanted to cause attention to themselves, so they stayed in like toxic situations.
Yeah, keeping
And
up with appearances, and
yeah.
yeah.
And I feel like even like, well, I know with my parents, for one thing, it's like because they grew up in that time, it's like now being in a generation where people are kind of just doing their own thing and going their own
Yeah.
way, they're like, oh my God. They're like, this is
Yeah.
crazy because like, how are you even acting differently and causing attention to yourself and like doing these things that
Right.
go against the grain? Because they're just so like, stay in line. We don't do that. This is who we like, this is who we are,
Yeah.
like just shush shush just like what
Exactly.
happens here stays here, like just very
Mm-hmm.
secret. And I think that's like the issue and why everyone is so divided, and I think that's what makes people so scared too to like tell the truth, like just like you are, and being open because they don't want to be, I don't know, they don't want their truths to be like weaponized against
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yeah. And again, I think I hold I hold a perspective. I mean, getting into gender, the masculine, feminine, you know what I mean? It's, again, that's part of my work, because we all embody both.
Yeah.
So it's just a dance, you know, and if you do it with the right energy, you know, you can alchemize that, not only within yourself but within your partner or your other relationships or whatever. But I know you have like millennials on this platform, and it's like, you know, I say my age and I'm like, I've missed that. But what's funny is that there's a bit of a dispute about it. If you look at certain places, I'm classed as a millennial, and if you look at in other places, I'm classed as Generation X, because I
Mm,
just about missed the cutoff point. And I think the way that some people have studied it is because I'm what they would call the MTV generation.
is that
So
when
that's
MTV
the
first started?
yeah,
Okay.
Generation X. Yeah. So the kind of like the early 80s babies.
Mm,
Um, and so I remember, and I had a lot of my childhood be pre-internet. So it was TV, it was music video, music was the prevalent thing.
yeah.
So being classed in kind of Generation X kind of thing, we were all about the music. We had a lot of bands. We had, you know, we had grunge, we had like a lot of rebellious music
Yes.
that sort of shifted that, because people, this is how you know, we socialized, and we congregate, we made each other mixtapes. That's how we communicated to one another. I know, fucking miss mixtapes so bad, because if you wanted to express yourself and you didn't know how, you made that person a mixtape, and then they go home and listen to it, and they're like, I got you. Or you made some art for the for the tape cover, you
Yeah.
know. And that was a token. It was just all of these different little tokens. And so relationships were different back then. If, you know, you were kind of getting booed up with somebody, you know, it's like you put together a little mixtape of that, you know what I mean? Whereas like now it's kind of like they say something wrong on social media, and you're like, you know what I mean? Or they post
Yeah.
up a picture, or you post up a picture and they didn't like it, and it's like now there's an issue. And it's just like there's just such a difference. So I kind of straddled the both sides of like what romance was
Mhm.
then and what romance is now.
Yeah.
And then coming into sex, the with internet, I fully, you know, live in person witnessed the porn generation
Mhm.
kick into play. You know what I mean? It was no longer like magazines that were kind of like, "Ooh, that's a bit saucy." You know what I mean? It went on to like, you know, where people could still use their imagination. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And like back then, it was kind of like a healthier way, in a sense, I suppose, for like, you know, fathers or whoever felt, you know, that they felt like they wanted to connect with their children over that as they were going through adolescence or puberty. I mean, mine didn't at all. I had to guess how you
Mhm.
had sex. I had to like figure it out, you know what I mean? But I just put two and two together, and like but with that, I think that shifted the psyche of boys and girls during the 90s, during the late 90s.
Yeah.
And then we have become desensitized to that. You know, graphic is not graphic anymore. It's not even a word for that anymore. It's
Yeah.
beyond graphic. And the misconception of what each other wants, what
Mhm.
the masculine energy really deep down wants, and what the feminine energy really deep down wants. But then they look around them and they look at what is the norm, and they look at society, or they see their peers, and they go, oh, I'm supposed to want it like this, or I'm supposed to want
Mhm.
that. You know, and I'll probably, you know, it's like I'm going to get called out or called like, you know, a pussy or this or whatever, all of those derogatory terms to put down the male energy that actually also just wants connection, but has been so visually stimulated to an overloading point that that's taken over the drive of the heart, the drive of the soul. It's, you know what I mean? And they think it's just like a bodily thing,
Yeah.
but it's also that's what I'm supposed to do, I'm a guy, you know. Or girls kind of feeling that they have to perform, or you know, and guys get performance anxiety, girls get performance anxiety. It's like when you strip it down, we are just humans trying to navigate a particular gender, no matter what that is. That opens up obviously to multi layers now. You
Yeah.
know, it is acceptable to say so now, but back then you couldn't. It was just like, you know, very straight. This is how you have sex. This is how you treat your woman. This is how you treat your man. Blah 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 blah. And I, you know, got to watch it straddling those two generations. I got to watch it slide, but then it went the other way completely. So it's just about pulling. I really want us to get to a time where we're pulling those degrees back into balance, and we're addressing connection, you
Mm.
know, beyond gender. I want us to get to a place where, you know, women are making it okay for men to talk about their traumas and their vulnerabilities, and men making it okay for women to talk about that too. And
Mm-hmm.
then their own peers, you know,
Right.
to be able to hold space for that. I know, so I have guy friends that, you know, they just want to be able to talk about their relationships or what they want, but
Yeah.
then the way that their friends are, there's no space or capacity for it.
Oh, that makes me so sad.
Yeah, it really does. And so I feel like, you know, I try to be one of those women that if I have platonic friendships with guys, and, you know, and they're hetero, that I'm providing a, you know, space that's kind of like a, it's okay for you to
Mm-hmm.
talk about this with me. It doesn't have to be sexually confusing. It
Right.
can be open, it can be raw, and it can be honest. And I would like for you to get to a point where this becomes so comfortable to you that you don't have any self-consciousness about talking about emotions and relationships and how you feel.
Right.
You know, and if your friends aren't supportive, or all they're talking about is like, yeah, you should hit that, and they're not really listening to your feelings, then check your friends.
Right.
Are they the right people? Do you see what I mean?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think some people forget that in friendships. They just kind of stick with people who they grew up with or whatever. And it's,
Right.
you know,
Right. It's
just
like you
out
can
of
outgrow relationships. Like,
exactly. But then does that mean that there's a fear to losing people completely? Because lots of people obviously are scared to be alone. So it's kind of like, well, if I end this friendship, or if I end this, or I stop hanging out, that person's a bit toxic, then the fear is they won't meet anybody, you know?
yeah, and I think that also comes from the fact that, like, as adults, it's harder to meet people just because when we were in like grade
Mm-hmm.
school, you know, you're just like in class with tons of people. Like, you're just
Yeah.
constantly around potential friends. You're constantly meeting people, going to parties, whatever. As adults, it's
Yeah.
like, you know, you're kind of just like adulting. You work with people, or you're like in the house, or you're with their same friends. So if you cut off, and usually people keep like a same friend group, especially if you're like married or, you know, whatever.
Yes.
So it's like if you cut those people off, it's like, how do I go out and just meet friends? Because they have like apps for dating, but they don't have apps for like friends.
Right.
And I think Bumble is kind of an app for friends, but it's like that's kind of what I'm
Mm,
trying to create with in the flesh. Is like people can meet like-minded other people that are actually trying to create like real connection. But I
exactly.
think the idea is so foreign that it's going to take time for people to actually feel comfortable, like, okay, I feel, you know, I'm pouring myself out and being raw with these people, and I know that it's not going to like come back to bite me later,
Yes.
or I'm not
Yeah.
going to look like stupid or needy. Because that's another thing that I thought
Mm,
about when you started talking about growing up in the early 80s and having mixtapes and things like that. That's back when music was about love. You know what
wasn't
I
it
mean?
though?
And
Yes.
like I was born in 93.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm glad that I was not born in the early 2000s. I'd have been very sad if I missed out on, like, if I didn't know what grunge was. That would make me very
Oh,
sad.
right, right.
But like there was something really special about having to call someone on the phone and like ask if their parents if you could speak to them, or like going to like
Right.
knock on someone's door, or like playing outside and not having a phone, like literally just
Exactly.
playing outside, you know. Like I
Yeah.
think that relationships were so much more meaningful. I don't want to like take
Mm,
away from like now, but I think they were just meaningful because you really had to like get to know your friends. There was no such thing
yeah.
as like hanging out together, but you're in the same room
And
texting.
you're on your phone.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
And then like
Exactly.
as far as music goes, it's like I don't know. I still listen to a lot of older music and music that I came
Yeah.
up with just because it gives me peace and comfort.
Yeah.
But like it's very hard to find love songs now, I think, that are just about love and don't like try
Yes.
to slide in sex in some way or like
Exactly.
cheat on your girlfriend because I like you, just very
Yeah,
like
exactly.
weird.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad you brought that up because I
Mm,
think about that all the time and I get really sad because I'm like, I feel like it's because of the change in music and like
mhm.
culture for a very long time. I think people are scared of looking needy or like showing love is like, this is a weakness. Like a guy saying he can't
Mhm.
talk to his friends, it's like,
Mhm.
if you say you love her, you're weak. Or if you're like feeling
Mhm.
bad you guys broke up instead of like wanting to go out and do like a rebound situation, like you're whipped and you
Exactly.
have an issue. And I think that's just so sad that people can't process their emotions or really tell someone, hey, I like you, I want to be with you, without being like, oh, is this too much? I shouldn't like their pictures. I shouldn't blah blah blah. Like it's just like
So calculated, isn't it? It's not, it just doesn't organically allow the unfolding to happen in that way, where you can just really just feel into the chemistry you have with that person. It's
exactly.
like now you got to get into mindset. You got to, you know what I mean? Like you're trying to think about what they think, and then you police your own language or your own behavior. And I just think, no, fuck all that. It's
uh,
like you have to be all right with somebody not accepting certain parts of you, and
right.
if that's that, then if it's not the correct kind of love or the correct kind of relationship, then know that there is more for you, there is better for you. And it's just like, you know what I mean? But unfortunately some people just don't believe. I can't remember where the phrase comes from, but I've heard it, and it's not my own quote, but you attract the love you believe you deserve.
Oof, wow. I mean, I've heard that, but that also makes me very sad.
Right, it is. And so it's almost like I'm looking at things like, what can we do to make people see that, it is their self-worth, that is keeping them in a place that isn't conducive for their growth, but they belong somewhere higher, they belong somewhere better, they
Yeah.
belong, in their kind of ascension. And when you rise to that, you don't, I mean, I'm not saying you have to be all up all over yourself and in love with yourself and like, oh, I'm gonna say, and that's another toxicity. Self-love being kind of interpreted as how hot can you make your selfie.
Yeah.
You know what
Like
I
it
mean?
shouldn't go to like the ego side of it.
Exactly. But just knowing that if you feel you're not being treated right, you feel you're not being heard in this relationship, there is no listening or compassion or space or understanding for you, that you absolutely deserve that, and that you have the right to say, no, thank you. I love you. But if this isn't addressed and we can't move forward and you don't start to hear me, then maybe I am not for you. And that's
Mm,
painful. And you're not for me. That's painful. And we, of course, we're human. We hold attachments when we believe we're in love. We want to hold on to that thing. But here comes the spiritual trust in the universe. It's like the
right.
universe is going, I got something better for you, boo. Well done for acknowledging that lesson, for seeing that for what it is, and having the bravery to walk away for your own good. So here, we gift you with something better because
Mhm.
now you're ready.
Yeah.
Now you saw that lesson, now you're ready. So you're ready for an elevated love, a more correct love, because you recognized what you were deserving of.
Wow. I wish I knew you like before.
Before when, girl?
I just can't even. I know I can, we can get into that after.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
like the
for real.
relationships that I mean, wow, like that is wow. I wish I would have heard that like months ago, but
Oh,
um yeah, thank you. So that
thank
was
you.
everything you say is just like on, and I'm just grateful because that's like
I'm
certain
grateful.
thing. So
Hey.
the next question, what makes you really uncomfortable?
Mm. Ooh. On a personal level, about the world, like,
You can do either or both. People have shared
yeah.
like one of each. You can say whatever
Uh,
you want. It's your world.
makes me uncomfortable. Uh, having conversations I'm not knowledgeable enough about.
Mm,
Um, it definitely, on a personal level, kind of triggers certain things in me about not knowing enough, not being aware enough. And then I suppose that spins out into other people treating others as if they're like patronization, that kind of thing. I can't stand, you know, lack of understanding. But uncomfortable, I mean, if we're stripping it down to bare bones, I mean, just predatory behavior.
yeah.
I would say that is obviously the ultimate predatory behavior. Um,
And is this by like anyone in general?
mhm,
Okay.
yeah, I would say so. And uh, what else? Yeah, that's a really hard one, actually. That's a really hard question because I have to put myself there and see
Yeah.
what has made me uncomfortable. But again, because I go off of, I see, comfort or discomfort as an energy. When I feel that shift, uh I guess people who just have a real aggressive language, and I don't mean like profanity. I mean, I swear all the time. I mean, like, a, a very dominating way of being, a
Yeah.
very dominant way of speaking, a very, like, yeah, like I think I said it earlier, like even sort of like in its mildest form, extroverted people who don't have any kind of like, they've got no space to hold for other people, basically,
Mm.
and they're just like, that
Just like
claim.
arrogance, it sounds like.
Yeah, arrogance. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Like, arrogance makes me really, because then it makes me feel it's like, oh God, I don't want to have to challenge you in this, you know what I mean? But at the same time,
Hmm.
I would love for you to have the awareness of how you're impacting the people around you by your behavior,
Yeah.
So I suppose it's like situations like that. But yeah, that kind of, predatory behavior. But obviously, in my experience as, like, someone who identifies as a woman and has a woman's body, um that it comes back to me wanting to hide when I was younger, which is probably a clearer answer for you, is that I had a feeling that because of what happened, especially hetero men, felt that I was just available to be touched, that I was some, ornamental, or, if I was walking down the street, then absolutely they had the right to grab my hand and stop me and then force me to give them their phone number. And then if I didn't smile, it was like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, what's your problem? And then made it my responsibility that their ego was hurt because they've been rejected.
Yeah.
It was that kind of thing. And so that level of discomfort that I had made me not want to draw attention to myself. So I guess when people, it it filters out into me shrinking around arrogant, dominant energy that I feel, if like a room is out of balance, if other people aren't sharing the space, aren't being heard, then something is off balance. Something is dominating them, shrinking them, or making them feel uncomfortable, which makes me feel uncomfortable.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that
Yeah.
for sure. Um, what is something, okay, I'll start with this first question.
Hmm.
What is one of the hardest conversations you've had to have, and how did you like muscle through that? So it doesn't have to be something that you were uncomfortable with having, like maybe the person you had to speak to didn't want to have the conversation, but it's, a connection you had to make, you had
Mm,
to move past like whatever needed to be brought up. And like, how did you bring yourself to have that conversation and muscle through it? And like, what advice would you have for someone who has a really hard conversation that needs to be had? Because the other question was, and that
mm,
can be tied into this as well, is like, how do you feel people in our generation at large, so Gen X and
mhm,
millennials, like
mhm.
our communication, how do you feel we can be better about it? Because at the end of the day, we may be more open than maybe Gen Z, but it's
Mhm.
like we still have a lot of issues with communication and being completely vulnerable and open with people that we love and with strangers.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to keep remembering um that someone's learned experience causes them to be inappropriate or say the wrong thing or not be able to hear you or have the conversation with you, whilst you're also wanting to express yourself and get your point of across. It's the needing to be right, I think,
Mm,
that's can fuck people up in conversations. The needing to be right, and the scenario of attack and defense. And I just think but that's what humanity unfortunately has been built upon, is war, right? Attack
mhm,
and defense. It's what we've seen globally, attack and defense, like civilization rose upon it. So it's a shame that by now we don't realize that communication can happen without the attack and the defense. But at the same time, don't get me wrong, there are things that are morally wrong and there are things that are morally right.
yeah.
However, for example, a difficult conversation I had, I'm going to think of the most recent one, is me and my mom. Like when we were fighting, when I first stayed there in lockdown, we went through a baptism of fire before we got to the good and the correct conversations, the ones that
Mm,
were healing. And she had this preconceived notion of me being but it was her experience. And the hardest thing I had to hear when we got into this fight, because I don't remember how it started. I think I was just like, having a couple of moody days and I was processing a lot of things I was trying to clear. My triggers were being flared up because my issue that I've always had with my mom in the past is that she doesn't pay attention. So little things like, I had all these hang-ups. It's like when I graduated, she couldn't remember what degree I graduated in, even though she knew full well what my course was. But like on the day of, it was like, what did you study again? And it was like, to me, I was like, any other parent would be like right up in there telling their friends and like putting certificates up on the wall. So it was this kind of thing of like, felt like I'd just been ignored as a person growing in
mhm,
front of my mom. You know what I mean? Like she didn't, beyond who Stephanie was as her kid, she didn't really like look at me and that kind of thing. So there was this phase of like her just not paying attention to shit I was saying, and then I was getting riled up and I was really trying to suppress those things, but I recognized that that wasn't going to be good. If I suppressed those triggers, it was going to blow up at some point or another. And
yeah.
then it totally did, because she misheard the way I said something, And then she kicked off at me, and then she said, why do you have so much hate in you?
Mm.
And it completely turned my world upside down. In that moment, I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? And it was, I mean, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I was like, if I am anything but
Yeah.
do you have not have a shred of hate in myself at all, because it's
Yeah.
like, and it was just that in that moment, it was like, don't you see everything I've done to make sure that that didn't happen? I love you and forgive you. I love dad and I forgive him. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean I really am right with him as a person and I don't want a relationship with him. But
Right.
all of those things that happen, I have forgiven that. I've tried to hold understanding for that. And it was that comment that made me feel in that moment, I'm never going to get fucking anywhere with this woman. And this is it. This is the end of our relationship. But then something in me was like, no, okay. She said something really hurtful to you, really personal to you. But is it true though?
Mm.
Do you feel is it true? So, and I was like, no, she just misspoke. She
Mm.
misspoke. She doesn't see it right now, but it isn't true. I know what's true, and I know that I'm not a hateful person at all. So we're going to let her put that to one side, and I hope that she reflects on that later. But what's important is that we evolve in this conversation. Let's get somewhere. And so it was like, and it was hours and hours, this conversation, because it was just like up and down, up and down. And whenever I said, certain things like, okay, let's try, what is it that how would you like to have a relationship with me as your daughter? Because I've told you how I'd like to have a relationship with you as my mother. And
Mm.
then she was like, still kind of fixating on it. Oh, okay, so you know better than I do then, it's like, all right, clever Steph who uses big words and I don't get it, and you think you're bigger than me, you know. But what I was hearing in that moment was the inner child of her
Mm.
talking to me.
Yeah.
And I had to remember that it was fucking hard, because to not respond and not react as her daughter who was pissed off that she'd said shit like that to me. But I had to remember that my inner child was talking to my mother's inner child.
Mm. Wow. Wow.
And I think that's where we go wrong with communication, because the adult self wants to learn, wants to understand this conversation and get to a place of pacifying it and moving
Mm.
on. But the little one is the one that's kind of like freaking out and triggering and responding and fight. But as two adults, it's a shame we cannot kind of like remember that and kind of go, right, I hear you, but are you wanting to stay in that truth, or do you want to move beyond that truth? Because it's like, these are feelings, not facts.
Mm.
You can have your feeling, your emotion can be whatever you want it to be, but the other person in the conversation has to go, all right, but that's still you.
Yeah.
That's still you. That's not me.
Ugh. Wow. That is the most mature way I have heard somebody refer to an argument or a conversation ever. Like two inner children talking. After a
Uh-huh.
certain point, after you get so fed up, then it's like, okay, this isn't adult me anymore. This is now like little ego me or little hurt me or little scared me that's
Yeah.
just trying to like get the last word or just fight till the
Yeah.
end at the playground. Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
wow. Wow. But it's like, I'm so happy that I heard you say that because like with that way of thinking, it's easy to like walk away and return to a conversation
Yeah.
later. And then even
Yes.
tell the person that you're talking to, like, here's how I'm looking at this. So maybe we should both like have that in mind.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then, wow.
And eventually I got her to kind of say to me, and I was like, okay, just strip it away. Like, how do you feel we have anything in common or anything that we can bond over? Because I'm willing to just find that thing that kind of bridges the gap. And so it's like she was like, well, I know you, because she watches a lot of TV and I don't really. And so it was like, but I know she loves cooking channels and stuff like that. And, I was like, well, she was like, I don't really know what you like. And I was like, okay, well, you do, but it's like, travel and food and stuff like that. And she was like, well, I never talk about travel with you because I think it's going to upset you. And I said, why do you think it's going to upset me? She said, because you love it so much and it's lockdown and you can't travel. So I don't want to bring it up in case it makes you sad. And there you go. It's just miscommunication. I was like, no, I love to talk about that. It lights me up and I would enjoy it. So it's something we could share. So we watched travel food programs. That was a compromise, that we could enjoy that together. And I could talk about the places like, oh yeah, I've been there and stuff like that. And she gets to see a little more of me and I get to be a little more in her world where it's comfortable. She can just watch TV. Nothing is required of her. She doesn't have to come up with a conversation on her own to get to know me. She can just witness me.
Mm. Wow. That's beautiful. It is like,
Thank you. Thank you.
wow. Well, I'm happy. Wow. That was such like and then now you guys are cool.
Yeah,
Like,
we're just,
that,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, like we are trying to, and I see her, and what's important again is to help that inner child in the person that you're having those discussions with, or that you've had those arguments with. When you reach that point of peace where you can move around each other again, is
Mm-hmm.
give them praise for that. It's important to tell them that, you know what, I'm actually really proud of how you had that conversation. Like, thank you so much for hearing me. And I think this makes it, I really appreciate, I see you trying. It's
Mm.
really important to let someone know that you see them trying, because someone's trying it may not be as easy for them as it is for
Yeah.
you to make. It depends on the effort, right? And so it's like, all right, well, if I've got capacity to try more because it doesn't hurt me as much to try more, then I'll do that until that person feels that they can open up a little more and let a little more out. So she has been paying more attention to me when I'm having conversations, instead of just kind of like looking around the room. She's actually looking at me. That's huge progress after all this time. She's actually asking me questions. She's actually coming home from work and saying, how was your day? I didn't get a how was your day until about 6 months ago from my mom ever.
Mm.
And if she ever said sort of like, have you been, all she was looking for before on the phone was, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, things are
Mm-hmm.
good. And then that's it. And then you move on.
Yeah.
But now she's actually really trying to listen to more than that, and seeing that I'm not an angry person. I'm not full of hate. And I think, she did apologize for that. It took her a hot second to apologize for that some days, because she probably felt into the same thing that I felt, was that it wasn't true. And I was just like, I just need you to see me that in the way that, like, I'm trying to love you through your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but you've never been shaken up before. You've never been made to look at your stuff before.
Mm.
But unfortunately, as you know me, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, as a healer, I'm kind of like trained to do that. I'm
Yeah.
trained to help someone look, and mother or not, if she was just a client, I would be talking to her the same way. I'd be praising, but also observing and reflecting and mirroring back to that person what it is that they sound like and what it is that they actually want. It's like, I want to hear in you what it is that you need from me.
Mm.
And I want to be the exception to the rule. I want to prove to you that someone else is willing to give you what you need. You just have to trust it.
Damn. Wow. Yeah, I mean, you should like teach a course or something.
Oh,
For
thank you.
real. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking the questions, and I feel like you are giving some amazing answers that are helping me. And I know how to communicate. At least I'd like to think I know how to
You
communicate.
definitely
Like,
do.
but it just goes to show like there's always more to learn and more to do, and
Mhm.
always effort that needs to be given on both sides
Yeah.
regardless, even if you're right. Like, I think
Yes.
that's, like, what people miss
Another
out on.
thing, yeah. I mean, I've had like arguments with people who refuse to. I mean, again, it kind of comes to the spiritual thing, but it was like that guy that I was having this conversation with was so fixed. It started off from like compassion for animals, but then it was kind of like, talking about them as, and it was ridiculous, talking about them as like sentient beings, and then me going beyond and then saying they have a consciousness, and then like, it
Mhm.
still boggles my mind that there are people out there who don't think animals have souls. Like, how could, what the fuck, right?
Yeah, that's weird.
Right. And so it kind of spiraled into this whole thing about like consciousness and like trees having consciousness and plants having consciousness. And he wasn't having a bar of it because I couldn't provide him with scientific explanation for this, that, or the other. And I was like, you can to a certain degree. And I said, but you also have to be okay with the fact that there's a realm where science meets spirituality, and you have to be all right with its very nature being something untangible,
Mhm.
something you can't hold and grasp, something that someone in a white coat is like, can't tell you about. But
Right.
go to a quantum physicist and they'll tell you that there is so much that they're not ruling out at all. So anyway, long story short, this conversation went on and on and on. And I said to him time and time again, I'm okay with you not believing what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And he's like, yeah, but and I'm like, no, no, I'm okay with this conversation ending with you not believing in me,
Yeah.
but you're not. You're wanting to force me to leave it in a place where you feel correct. I'm all right with you feeling that I'm not correct because I'm still going to do me.
Right.
I'm
And
still
I
going to
still
have
believe
my
what
truth.
I believe, and I
Yeah.
still know my truth.
Yeah, but he was like trying to debate it out. And it was like, no, but you're not getting me. This conversation can end now because I'm jiggy. I'm fine with
I'm
you
digging.
not. I'm cool with you not need it. I don't need the resolution. I have my own. I
Yeah,
have my so
straight up. Like, I'm cool with being wrong. I don't need to, and that stops a lot
yeah.
of arguments in their tracks if people are just fine saying, like, okay, let's just agree to disagree.
Disagree.
You're
But
doing you.
yeah, it's just so funny how people can't leave it that way. But it's just, and I'm like, I don't need it to satisfy, anything. So again, don't get me wrong though, I do miss fire. I have lost my shit when I thought I could have been more composed. Obviously it's gonna happen, and I'm still gonna keep learning that. And as long as I keep talking to different walks of life, which I want to, then I'm gonna be able to get a handle on those different language quirks and those different behavioral things that occur in those conversations, so that I can be a witness to it, and I can participate, but I'm not stepping in that person's story and I'm not getting hooked by it. And if I do, and I walk away from someone who really, upset me or pissed me off, and I'm kind of like, what? My question is not like, why is that guy such an asshole? Why is that? My question is, why did that bother me so damn much?
Mm, yeah.
Where does that come from? Why that particular thing that was said? So then I have to start digging into where that comes from, and maybe that, I see a pattern of like where I've responded in that same way to other people before, and it's like, all right, well, they don't know my past, they don't know my experience, so how can I not allow that to eat away at me, and how can I address it and gently release it?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. Like, always using opportunities to like heal and be better for yourself, because we
Yeah,
can't like force other people to be better. We can't help
exactly,
ourselves. So just
exactly.
can.
You can
I
only
love
just show
that.
people how to reflect a little more. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it does. It is the only thing I rely on is domino effect. You're kind to someone one day, or a stranger, whatever, and that's like it creates like a domino effect. Then they're like slightly kinder to the next person in the street because you smiled and you were so warm, and it just kind of opened them up a little bit more, and then it has another domino effect, that person, you see what I mean? And I think like if we can just be examples of that in communication especially, then I hope that it would catch on, that people start to see that there is a different way to communicate without dumping all of our own, you know, kind of hooks and hang-ups, but also at the same time not ignoring ourselves in conversations, being, you know, being behind our beliefs, very much knowing your mind is
Yeah.
really, really key, you know, but at the same time just giving breathing room to the fact that it's not your experience, and it's like it's something that you may not understand, so you have to take a little bit of a backseat in that conversation and allow that person to say what they need to say.
Mm,
um you know, and then if they're willing to hear you, as long as your language is reflective and gentle and understanding, and you want to learn more, but it's not you know, you're not poking at people, you
mm,
know, you're not trying to scratch away at them, then they'll feel like they can open up a bit more because you're not taking it to an argumentative place.
mm.
So I think the more people see that it doesn't always have to result in conflict, hopefully people, yeah, will allow those open-ended things to be as they are.
Amen. Two more questions, but this one
Okay.
question has two questions in it, kind of. So,
Okay.
so the first one is, what do you need to heal? So the two questions in that are
Mm-hmm.
like, what do you need to heal that you've kind of been putting off? And then the other one is like, what do you need in order to heal?
What do I need to heal? My frustration with um not being okay, like without somewhere secure, without security. Because I
Mm,
have like this real desire to feel at home, and that's
mhm,
an inner child thing. um I still need to heal being okay with being alone sometimes. Pisces moon will play on those things, but when I say not alone, I don't mean like in a relationship or anything like that, but I mean feeling like I have to do everything myself.
mm, yeah.
Feeling like I have to just shoulder the shit and just deal with all of that, but and then draining myself and exhausting myself. um I also need to heal some creative blocks. I would say like writing has been a lifelong thing.
Mm,
Like when I was 10 years old, I started writing, and like I just it was just like that's what I wanted to do. And then I think with other things in life later on, I started to block those things. And I think the ultimate thing in when I can't write, or I don't feel secure, or I don't feel like my environment's right, or I can't do this, is allowing myself to be me anywhere, you know, to
yeah.
fully unpack anywhere. I don't think I have reached a place where I can do that yet. There's always a vigilance about me. There's always like I'm just going to stay alert cause of. So I don't fully relax into a place. I don't
Mhm.
fully relax into myself when I create sometimes. When I get there, it's beautiful and I love it and I want that more. But the sort of material world, the physical, the home thing, it's like that has provided like a almost a great excuse for me procrastinating. You know, it's kind of like, oh well, when this is right, oh when I get my own place, or when I are you hearing some resonance? Are you
Yes. We have a
you
lot
know,
in common.
common. I'm seeing this. I'm totally seeing this. And so I get, you know, I get a little more irritable. a little more
Yeah.
twitchy, a little more, you know what I mean? It's like, and I can't unpack, I can't unfold. And I admire people who can, who can just like park up anywhere and just like unpack their shit and just be, and
Yeah.
like fully live in that space and fully just
Mhm.
be. I've struggled with that my whole life. And I do
Mhm.
try, I really do try. And it's like, but it's conflicted because I love to travel so much. I love adventure so much. I love to experience all different parts of the world. But then I get to this point in my life and I'm like, just for the love of God, can I please have somewhere to hang my head? And my
Mm.
biggest lesson is being okay with that not being my path for now. And
Yeah.
then I think another thing, bringing it down to maybe temperament, something I have to heal, is being impatient.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, as a Taurus, I have a lot of patience in the world for a lot of shit,
Yeah.
but there's something, I don't know, there's something in here, something personal in here that's a
Mhm.
little niggly and a little, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do have to, even though I can, I can show patience. I do catch myself. I'm getting better at it now, but it definitely forces me to allow things to be as they are for now. But then I'm kind of like, all right, well, it's been like this for years. Like, come on, where's my apartment? Come on, where's that finished book I'm supposed to write? Like, come on, like, why am I not getting going? Why are things
Mhm.
not, what I mean, not quite in alignment? So it just makes me exercise that trust that it's there and
I
that
feel
this
like
is,
I have the most impatience with myself, so I can totally like
it is with the self, isn't it, more than anything, I think.
yeah, because whatever it's easy to let
Yeah,
so many things fly in the world and with other people, but when it comes to you, it's like, okay,
yeah,
why can't you just like do the thing the way it's supposed to get done right now?
yeah,
Like, yeah, yeah.
that's it, that's exactly what it is. It's impatience with the self. Yeah, bro.
Okay. The last question is
Mm-hmm.
all of the power goes out, but the telephone's screen, well, yeah, telephone, computer, and TV screens go out, and it's like PSA public service announcement, and then it's your face. So the whole world can see you. So,
Oh
like,
my
I
god,
know that you grew up kind of shy, but like, is
very shy.
other than like maybe fainting, what would you say to the world in that moment? And it doesn't have to be like an apocalyptic
uh,
situation. It's like,
right.
what is something that you really feel like you would want to tell the world if you had the space to do?
Oh, I'm trying to think of like, it comes on. I probably crack a stupid joke just to make myself relax.
Yeah.
And soften everybody and just kind of be like, we're all in this together.
Mm,
We're all in this together. Um, I don't know what else would, I mean, how would I expand on that though? I think I would, it's like if we can't see each other and we can't hear each other, we are still together. We are a collective.
mm,
We can feel each other's, we can feel our way through humanity. We can feel this connectivity. And so if you fall, I fall. If I fall, you fall, you know?
yeah.
And we're strip all of this away and we're just beings. And so how do we get through this? How do we put our what is not of material form together? Our minds and our souls, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
That's, and then I'd probably get shy again and go, okay, stop looking at me now. Stop listening to me.
Like, hey, bye. Have a good
Yeah,
day.
yeah, goodbye. Just remember that you're not looking at just a body. You're looking at so much more than that. You're looking at the makeup of all of this that exists here. So how do we feel our way through that? But yet at the same time, we're all in this big web. We're connected. So everything is rippling. And if we can just hold on to that awareness, then we can ripple in the same direction together.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for doing this. This was
I
so beautiful.
I've had such a beautiful time and a lovely conversation.